In today's video, we are once again going to be talking about all three of these models. Again, we have this format that we've been doing because of my new computer situation. We will get past it hopefully tomorrow, actually. Or no, the day after tomorrow's video should be back to like WSV3 and all that. So bear with us. We're just going to be talking about all of these storms. We have kind of storm number 2 already developing down here. We have storm number 1 that we could see has pretty much moved out here. So we see that. And then probably downstream, we have storm number 3 and beyond happening in the Pacific. Now, what we're going to see is this one just totally moving out. So we'll see that move out of frame. And then we're going to see this one move up. And that's going to be our next threat or snowfall. And let me tell you, the opportunities moving forward from this point look to be great. There seems to be just a lot going on in the upcoming pattern, in my opinion, a lot more than we've seen in the whole winter, basically. We can tell that this storm is a very potent one. We see plenty of snowfall here in Oklahoma, Texas here. Really just heavy, heavy, heavy precipitation, especially snowfall happening there. And we can see just the inflow of basically humid and warm temperatures there. This is really going to create a lot of moisture for this snowstorm when you get this Gulf energy involved. And sure enough, that's what we see the whole time. And we've talked about this again and again, but you can totally see this stream of moisture heading right into the storm here from the Gulf of Mexico, and this is going to greatly improve the total precipitation rate for most of the storm. And we can see there's a pretty wide swath of heavy snowfall happening here through Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania especially, but even Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa seeing some here, Kentucky, West Virginia. So you got a lot of states involved here. Probably thunderstorms on the southern end can't be ruled out as well. I would say Wednesday into Thursday here. We're taking a look at about 8 p.m. on Wednesday here, and we see plenty of this snowfall still taking place. A bit of some mixing issues on the eastern end, and the reason being is we have this cold front down here. We have our low located over Ohio, and then you have your warm front here, and that's pushing this mixing line basically where we're seeing rain and snow uh, further and further north. So these areas are starting out as snowfall, potentially pushing into more and more rainfall. As you can see, this spreads up through southern New England. Northern New England, however, still seeing that frozen precipitation. We can tell that this is kind of an interesting look. We see that this is a pretty substantial kind of like S-looking curve there, backwards S-looking curve taking place there. I guess a 2. It kind of looks like the number 2 a little bit. We see that it has all this curvature going on the western end of things, and even on the eastern end, it has a little bit of curvature as well. So you get kind of this kind of bottle cap look. I don't know what you'd call it, but it's this cold has plenty of room to spread east and west once it enters in. So we're seeing a lot of cold air pouring in through the central portions of the nation, and it's spreading pretty wide there. This is going to continue to actually move eastward, as you can see. So we're seeing more of this activity continuing to spread eastward. If any bit of moisture wants to move in along this jet stream, this is a prime setup for any snowfall. We do see a bit of a clipper system wanting to move through as well. There's plenty of cold air for later this week, and we do see some of this come together here right around Sunday, but we see warm air pushing up at the same exact time. This seems to be a common theme this winter. Every time a storm lines up, the warm air lines up with it at the same exact time. So when the cold is there, there's no precipitation. Once the warm arrives, it's instantly that kind of tap turns back on, and we see just tons of moisture flowing through the pattern. And you could tell here a pretty stormy look here as we're approaching Sunday into Monday. That's the 29th into the 30th. We get storm number 2 or 3 there, kind of just the flow of kind of broad low pressure here, it appears, throughout the southern and eastern United States, right around February 1st. And then we get this cold air moving back in. But the interesting thing here on the European model, and take this with a grain of salt, this is 240 hours out. I know the European model is the best model, but it still doesn't mean that it's perfect all the way through the entire model run every time. We do see again this flow of Gulf moisture all the way up the eastern United States. But the interesting thing is we see snowfall up and down the western end of this, where there is enough cold. We even see snow as far south as Louisiana and Mississippi, very rare there, and we see rainfall as far north as coastal Maine. So could you imagine if coastal Maine was seeing rain and then southern Louisiana was seeing some snowfall in spots? That would be just the craziest craziest west to east difference that you could imagine, basically. And this does happen. This is not unheard of. Very, very crazy stuff. And this shows how strong the southeast ridge is here with this warm air heading up the coast. This is just creating so much abnormally warm temperatures along that coast. And then on the west side of things, you don't have that southeast ridge influence, and we have cold air pouring in behind all of this. And that's why we see snowfall able to make its way so far south on the western end of things. Now, that is the end of the model run. I think this is an interesting place to close off. And I think the snowfall opportunities, at least you could say, for these areas here, is going to be greatly improving after this point. And we'll take a look at the evidence for why in just a minute. Total precipitation, again, just like the last few model runs, we could totally tell all of this Gulf moisture is flowing through the eastern United States. And the interesting thing here is go take a look at a video from like June, July timeframe of mine where I would show this. And this is the exact same area we saw tons of precipitation in the summertime with the same, La Nina look. We had this kind of Gulf energy flowing into the eastern United States just like this, but we're in January now. I mean, 6, 7 months later, and really we're seeing just such an incredible pattern. It's amazing, really. Now the total snowfall here in the grays, a dusting, if anything, blues 2 to 6 inches of snowfall, purple 6 to 10, pinks 10 to 20 there, purples. I think I just said the purples, so we're going to move on from that. The pastel blues there are going to be 20 to 35, and your pastel pink's going to be 35 inches plus. We do see a bit of that there for the Sierra Nevada mountains that are having such an incredible snowfall year. Very similar to the year that the Donner Party passed through this region, just abnormally above average snowfall. This does happen in this area. They have great fluctuating winters. I mean, some years it's quite minimal, and then some years it's just more snowfall than anywhere else in the United States ever. And this happens to be one of those years where it lines up. And it seems like that's what happened the year the Donner Party came through as well. Um, just crazy, crazy stuff there. Now, the GFS model here, let's just move on with it. We get storm number one. We'll show you guys storm number two. Or actually, this is storm number two, so we'll show you it. Again, we get this heavier snowfall look through a lot of the Ohio Valley into the Mid-Atlantic. A little bit more of a warmer solution here, a little bit more of an inland solution there on the GFS model. And we get more cold air afterwards, so we're getting more cold air in the east than we saw on that European model here. Kind of spread pretty wide. And a lot of times when these troughs are spread pretty wide like this, so as you can see, that trough is building very wide. You can probably see it at least. It's a pretty wide trough. It doesn't make it as far south as you can see as a result. Now, these troughs where you have a massive ridge in the west and a deep trough in the west, we will see a much thinner trough like this is oftentimes what you would see in a deeper one. Because there's only so much cold air to go around. You know what I mean? There can't be a trough across the entire United States that digs as far deep as Texas and Florida. It just doesn't happen that way. There's not enough cold air really available unless we had like a polar shift or something crazy like that. That's what it would take. It would take monumental movement for that to occur. Now, as we continue with things on, we see storm number three kind of brings a bit of an inland, interior northeast, I guess you'd call it, snowstorm there, right around the 29th. I think what's interesting here is we see something build in right around the 31st into the 1st of February. We do see some development here on the GFS model, and this is less than 200 hours out. So this has my attention, but I really don't feel like it is something obviously locked in yet. This is the only model showing it here. It seems like a pretty realistic type of snowstorm, in my opinion, where you have this cold air pouring out back to the west. Obviously, this warm front would be on the eastern side of things, which is offshore. So this is a good position. There's ample amounts of cold air there for an East Coast snowstorm. It's just this is the only model showing it. But this setup is exactly what you'd be looking for. And there is a bit of a low up here, kind of supporting that type of a look, some lower pressure up above. That definitely leads me towards thinking that this is a semi-realistic solution. So we'll be watching for a potential southern mid-Atlantic up through kind of coastal Jersey, Long Island, southern New England area, kind of a well offshore or a nor'easter, I guess you could say, definitely a possibility there. So we'll continue to track that. We do get this kind of deeper trough on this GFS model as well. But it's further west, as you can see, and the southeast ridge has a huge hold on this east coast region. And what this creates is just this very unique snowstorm look here by the time we're reaching about February 3rd. And all of the models kind of have this one. But we can see the cold air kind of damming south here on that western end. And this is pushing the warm air up on the eastern end of things. So western end cold and snowy, eastern end rainy and warm. Um, I just want to see what hour we're at here because I want to compare it to the GFS or the European model. That's 0Z on Friday the 3rd. Yeah, so this is something I noted. We have a pretty similar look here. It's a little bit colder on the GFS model, but the interesting thing here is on the European model, the jet stream is doing about like this. And I want to compare the GFS model, which we'll draw in the red, I guess, here. It's a little bit more west based with it. So we have this kind of a look here. Both of them have a major trough. That GFS is just much further west with it. The European model being much further east with it. I also want to draw our attention to where that low would be. I want to figure this out. So the European model has that low approximately here, and I don't want to bore anybody to death. So that low is approximately here. Let's see where that GFS model has it. So we have that primary low is somewhere in the southeast corridor here, it appears. Or no, better yet, you know what? Forget that. I'm drawing all over the screen now. It's actually up here somewhere. So we have a bit of a difference where that low is, where the jet stream is at with everything. But we have a low in the eastern United States. We have a major trough in the United States. At the same time, let's even take this Canadian model. Let's just take it all the way to hours 240. And look at this. We have a pretty similar look. We'll draw this one in the blue on the Canadian model. And it looks a little bit more like this. So a wide stretching trough, probably closer to the European model here. We do also have a low in a more similar spot to that European model. So all three major models have a big trough to start February, and all three have an eastern low pressure system. I guess is the point that I'm trying to get across here as we've drawn all over the screen. Definitely interesting to note that we have better agreement from that GFS model to the Canadian and the European. If you've been tuning in with us daily, you know the European model and the Canadian model have been in sync. They've been basically showing a very similar look, but the GFS model has been the one showing huge differences. But now, hey, we have all three on board. So very, very interesting. Let's keep going with the GFS model though, and look what happens after that point, okay? Now on the GFS model, after that storm is said and done for the 4th of February, look at the setup we have. I mean, it might even be more like this, which is going to be way more uh, cold and just snow opportunities than we've seen all winter. You also have a 50-50 low up here, which would be able to throw cold air down the East Coast even more than you normally have. So you have this low there in a really, really good spot, I must say, as well. And you have this flow of moisture, as you can see, all the way from the Gulf and running along that trough. If anything was to get going here and really get going in a big way, we would be taking a look at potential for an East Coast snowstorm, definitely more than we've seen all winter. And we see that cold sticks around. And what happens is we see a bit of a snowstorm develop here. But in classic 2022 to 2023 winter fashion, we see the southeast ridge start to build at the exact same time as a storm finally moves in, and we see it completely cut. And basically, we get this very mixed bag event, very not snowy event here, according to the GFS model. Now, thankfully, the GFS model is highly inaccurate in the long range, as of especially this year. But this does seem rather realistic for how this winter has gone. So there's multiple sides to it, as there is with every story, but definitely an interesting look there. I'm going to show you guys what happens with this Canadian model in the long range. We do see this trough building in. And definitely with this look of very, very intense cold air, it does appear like this has some rotation to it, which usually this would indicate that there's going to be a bit of a bigger trough developing, especially eastward. All of this looks to move in there. So I could see that all the models are basically aiming for that first week of February being very cold. So we'll continue to watch things, but that does seem to be direction they're moving with it. So I hope this video wasn't too all over the place. I realized that I was drawing all over the screen and getting a little bit technical with it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Also, be sure to subscribe. We do upload every single day, and I'm excited to track all of these features and all of these things we have going on here so far for the beginning of February, looking to shape up to be very, very interesting. So be sure to subscribe. You can even hit the bell icon and click all videos for daily notifications when we do upload. Also, like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.